Yeah. Hello, everyone. Sorry for being late. We had some slight technical difficulties, but everything should be sorted right now. So yeah, welcome to our webinar. And the next hour, I'll introduce you to PSPDFKit API. I'll talk about common use cases and show you a demo so you can see it in action and get a feel how the product works. And hopefully you have some foundations that you can build up and to test it, evaluate, and hopefully license it and use it. So yeah, to start, let's go with some obligatory technical stuff. There's a chat in the Livestorm UI, so feel free to use it. If you hit any technical difficulties, like there's too small font in examples, or you can't understand me well, or they are like my internet is laggy or something like that, just speak out. I'll look into the chat as often as possible, and I'll try to resolve anything that's going on. Yeah. Also, feel free to ask any questions. Livestorm has a questions tab on the right that you can use, so everybody can then vote on it and so on. But I'll try to go through all the questions and answer them as I notice them. But of course, it could be that I miss some. So by the end of this webinar, I allocated a full section dedicated to questions and answers. So I'll try to answer everything that might come up. So yeah, before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm Tomáš. I'm based in Central Europe, Slovakia. If you are interested, but very small country, but yeah, it's what it is. I work for PSPDFKit since 2016. I was working on major parts of our Android SDK, and a few years ago, I transitioned to working on web and server just to get some change of scenery and work on something new and fresh for me. So yeah. We can move to introducing us, PSPDFKit as a company. I'm not sure if you know us or seen us, but yeah, let's talk briefly about who we are, how we got here. I can say that if we wanted to have a one-sentence speech, what we do is we build developer tools to help people do document processing and handling document workflows. We try to build quality software. I think we are very proud for what we do in terms of making it as simple as possible for our customers to actually get their jobs done, all while building very quality APIs and UIs. On top of this, if something goes wrong or if something's not clear, we also provide very responsive support. So that's a defining feature of the company. We are fully remote, having 70+ team members and counting from a large amount of countries spanning the whole globe. And if you are interested about where you can find us, our software is used by almost 500 million users worldwide, and this is because we are used by a large number of companies spanning from Fortune 500 to like very small startups. And I think it's very much possible that you've already seen or came into contact with some of our software in some form or another. Let me briefly touch on a history of PSPDFKit. We started in 2011 with a PSPDFKit SDK for iOS, which was like a SDK for handling PDF, displaying them, and so on. In the following years, we extended to other platforms. So Android, I mentioned that was my forte. I worked on this product almost from the beginning. Yeah, then we brought up web, and starting with this decade, we tried to move from the SDK market. We are still providing SDKs, that's still a major part of our business, but we try to do other things. And one of those is processor for Linux. Our SDKs always allowed people to process PDFs, but the processor for Linux came into existence based on the need of our customers just to handle only the document processing and not handling PDFs in a way like displaying them and so on. 2021 was a big year for us in terms of business growth and product growth, because we partnered with investment firm Inside Partners, which allows us to extend our product offerings faster, grow faster, and hopefully bring even wide range of products than ever before. And that brings us to current time, 2022, we released our PSPDFKit API product, which is what this talk is about. So let's talk a bit about what is the PSPDFKit API. Basically, it's just an HTTP API that handles a lot of heavy lifting for you. By HTTP API, I mean that we don't really care what language or environment you might be using us from. So it's basically language agnostic. You can use any environment that can send HTTP requests, which is basically all of them, hopefully. And that's the extent of what you need to do to interact with the API. In terms of feature scope, we provide a wide range of PDF processing and document processing tools, ranging from generating PDFs from templates, converting Office documents or images to PDFs, or modifying existing PDFs, and so on. The API provides very simple but rich workflow, where you provide all the input documents, send a request to the API endpoint, and you get back the processed document. The whole API is stateless, so this has a big benefit in terms of security, because we guarantee that we don't store anything. There's no reason for us to store any input files, because after the processing is done, we can just forget about them, and we are all of us could be happy. Yeah, so that were the basics, and we can get to more interesting terms. I'll show you how the API works. I'll start with our website and guide you through how it works, how you can use it, and then show you some interesting use cases that you might want to know about. So yeah, the whole PSPDFKit API is served under pspdfkit.com/API. These are our marketing pages and documentation all together. When you first visit us, you are already presented with some materials in terms of showcasing what kinds of features we provide. So I'm going to go through the major ones right now, just to give you the perspective of what's possible, and then we'll dig deeper into selected view to show you how they actually work in a live environment. So yeah, let's get started with the PDF generator. As I mentioned before, we support generating PDFs from templates. This template, we chose HTML as a templating language because that's basically a de facto standard to design documents. That's on one hand pretty widely used. On the other has a rich, allows you to express rich visuals fairly easily. So that's a PDF generator. You just provide HTML file with all the assets, and we get you back a PDF that's generating from that HTML. Another interesting tool is OCR. This tries to solve a use case where you provide, when you have a bunch of scanned documents and you want to search in them. So what this does, it recognizes the text, inserts it into PDF, and gets you back a PDF with that original image, but with an invisible text layer that you can use for searching, copying text, and so on. Another tool is Watermark, which allows you to add some branding on watermarking to your PDFs. Imagine example use case could be adding a big draft watermark or confidential watermark in the middle of document of pages in a document, so it's clearly presented that what's the intent of that document. Wide range of what PSPDFKit API provides is a converter API feature, which supports converting Microsoft Office files to PDFs as well as images to PDF. And we also support rendering PDFs to images, so basically PDF to image conversion. This can be very useful if you want to display previews of your PDFs in your service, or you just want to render PDF into images and for archiving purposes or whatever. We try to extend our offering on ongoing basis. So like what I'm going to present today is not the full extent that you'll get in like a half a year or even a year and so on. One of the brand new features that's not yet available, but we are working on, is a table extraction API. So if you are interested, you can look through it as a small teaser. And that gets us to actually already existing feature, which is a editor APIs that allow you to manipulate PDFs. So like the usual things like you want to merge multiple PDFs together, you want to delete some pages, and so on. So yeah, that was the very, very rough description of the feature scape that we provide at the moment. And we can talk a bit about how to use the dashboard, and then we get the actual examples. So when you're logged in, when you open the website, you are presented with the details about all these tools I mentioned. Each tool provides you with a getting started guide that shows you some examples in multiple languages, as well as some documentation for the most common use cases you might want to do with that given feature. Then there's, of course, obligatory pricing page. So we can talk about it a bit already. So the API is a fully managed service that we provide. So we take care of the infrastructure, and we expose very easy to use API endpoints for you that you can use. For this, we ask, of course, some money, so we can actually make the service better and pay the infrastructure cost. So when you first log in, you'll be given a free, or you can look at it as a trial subscription, which gives you 100 documents a month. So you can get a feel of how the API could fit into your use case. But we allow different packages for different scales, I can say. So right now we define 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 documents a month as subscription packages, but you are always free to contact our sales, and we can grab a custom plan for you based on what you need. Yeah, I mentioned documents a month. One very nice feature or one very nice design consideration we had when designing the API as well as the billing for the service was that we wanted to make the whole thing easy to understand, easy to grasp, work in an expected way. So this is why we chose to simply base our pricing on a per document manner, which means it does not matter how complicated documents you process or how many operations you perform during the processing. You are always charged per one document processed. So you can look at it, if I get a one document, be it PDF or a rendered image out of the API, I'm only billed once. So that it counts only once to your quota. Yeah, I see a question in the chat. With the pricing on up to XYZ documents per month, what exactly does that mean? What if you call the API 10 times on the same document, as an example? Yeah, if you, as I mentioned before, we don't store the documents. API is totally stateless. So if you run the same, if you run processing on the same inputs again, you'll be charged again for that processing request. I hope that answers the question. So yeah, Mike, if you have follow up, just feel free to ask. Yeah, that was the pricing. Once you log in, as I mentioned, you get a free subscription, so you can try the API in action. Everything you need is basically logging in, getting your API key, and starting to send some requests our way to process some documents. So we can move to actually seeing some of these tools in action. I'll be using Postman, which is a UI tool for interacting with HTTP APIs. If you are interested to use it, we provide a ready-to-use collection. It's like in Postman terms, that's just importable data that allows you to run multiple predefined requests through Postman. If you are interested, just navigate to documentation, getting started, Postman collection. So I see there's another question. Yeah, if you call multiple APIs on the same document simultaneously on several pages of the same document, will it still just charge me for one document? Yeah, if you call, for example, OCR and watermarking, it still counts as a one charge for your subscription quota. I'll show that by the end of this section of examples. So hopefully you get a better idea about how that works. So yeah, we can get started with the actual demo of how the API works. I chose just a few examples. So let's start with PDF editing, because that's very simple. I can give you some idea on how the whole API is structured. So the main magic happens in basically just this one endpoint, the PSPDFKit API /build. We expect people to post all their inputs to this endpoint with JSON instructions that describe what should happen with those inputs, and we give you back the processed output. for this reason, I mentioned that we support multiple inputs. For this reason, we rely on multi-part requests that allow you to send multiple files, multiple pieces of content in the same HTTP request. This is fairly easy to implement in all major languages. There are libraries for that, and I'll also show you an example how to do this in JavaScript so you can get an idea. So let's start with the simple merge request. So let's say I have these two documents. This is like a document with 2 pages, and this is another document with another 3 pages. And what I want to do, I want to concatenate these 2 parts together. So how can I do it? I'll create a request, multi-part request that specifies 2 file parts, first part, second part, and I provide a JSON with instructions that specify how I want the output PDF to look like. So this is done with a parts attribute, which is a list of parts that should be outputted in the final document. So in this case, I want to output file part 1, and then immediately after that, there's going to be file part 2. When I run this request, PSPDFKit API obtains all these input files, parses the instructions, and gets you back the result. I need to apologize a bit for this UI from Postman. It's not exactly the best. I'll try to save the documents to my downloads and show them in a native PDF viewer. But for very simple cases like this one, it should be enough and will be way faster to show what happened. So in this case, I have these 2 pages from the first document, and I have the last 3 pages from the second document. So this is all right and as expected. We also try to design the API in a way that it's very easy to use. So if you, for example, specify some part in your instructions and you forget to send it, or it has wrong naming or something, we return you easily parsable error message. So you get a error 400, which is like a request error, and we specify details and the path to whatever is wrong and what needs to be fixed. That makes the usage of the API way easier, in my opinion, especially if you are just starting and will probably hit some errors along the way in terms of formatting, sending some data, or specifying it in instructions. Yes, so let's move to conversion. All of these APIs work in a very similar way. As you've seen before, we use this file instruction in the parts that specifies the part from the multi-part that should be part of the output document. So with conversion, it's actually very simple because it looks the same as before. I want the document that consists of this document part. But you can provide any of the supported types as a document without any work whatsoever, like providing content type or anything. We auto-detect the content type to make it easier for you to handle these cases. So I'm now sending a docx document, which is like, this is the input that I'm showing in the preview. It's fairly small, but yeah, I think you can get a picture of that it actually works. We support a regular set of Office documents, so like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and we support also the open XML formats and the legacy doc, Excel and PowerPoint ones. Another conversion another set of formats that supported are images. So in this area, we support PNG, JPEG, and TIFFs. So let's say I have this PNG, and I can again run similar request as before. So the instructions are, and the image part is our PNG. And when I run it, I'll get a single page PDF with the image as the content of that page. So that's conversion. And you can also go the opposite way, rendering the page. This works very similar to before, but by default, we output PDFs, as you've seen so far. So if you want to output different file format, in this case, rendered image, you need to provide this part in the instruction JSON that specify the output type, format that you want to the image format. In this case, we support PNG, JPEGs, and WebPs because we believe that they're well used in web world. So it's definitely a must to support them. You can specify usual options like width, height, or you can even do like DPI-based rendering. So you can provide like, I want to have all my images rendered in 300 DPIs. So we automatically calculate the necessary dimensions. And yeah, this is the rendered page. And this API also supports rendering multiple pages. So I can wrap that up quickly because that example got removed from the collection. But yeah, you just need to provide a range of pages that you want to render. All the pages are 0 indexed. So I'll use a start index as 0 and the end index as -1. So we also, by the way, we also support the negative indexes to index from the end of the pages array. And in this case, we are not getting the image back. We get instead we get a zip with all the requested pages. So let's look at my downloads and look at the rendered pages. This is the same example PDF that I used before for merging. I see we have a question regarding from Mike. Is it possible to have large DPI images resized when converted to PDF? For example, pictures taken from large megapixel phones with the PDF be just as large as the original image. Right now, this is not possible, but it's definitely a possibility on our roadmap. We already thought about it. We are just, I guess it's a matter of how many of our customers request it, and it will get prioritized higher. I hope that answers your question. I think we can move to another example, which is the PDF generation. Here it gets slightly more complicated. So for this example, I picked a very simple invoice template that has some custom fonts. Otherwise, it's just a custom it's just a standard HTML. By the way, you can also put these styles to external file and send it together with the request. So it does not matter if you want to make things a bit more organized. The template, I just filled in some invoice data, some random data, so we get a nice rendering. And yeah, I also want to talk about one interesting feature that our HTML generation has, and it's a support for custom headers and footers. The API is very, very simple. You are supposed to provide a div HTML element with PSPDFKit header ID, and everything that's inside this element will be duplicated on each page. So in this case, I added a company logo with some contact details. And similarly, we also support footers. Here, I want to showcase this part, which are our magic variables that you can use to insert the correct page number and as well as the total number of pages in the footer. So you get a nice pagination for multi-page documents. So yeah, let's run this document through the API. So yeah, I have my invoice HTML, the file that I just showed you, all the referenced files. So these are the custom fonts that I mentioned, and here is the company logo that I added to the header. The instructions are slightly different to like a standard file part. In this case, instead of using file as a file part, you use HTML part. You need to specify all names of parts in the multi-part request that contain assets that are enabled to be loaded from that when doing the HTML conversion. We don't load anything from network because of just the basic reason, security, like anybody can inject something, some rogue JavaScript and so on. So not downloading stuff from network prevents this. You can also provide basic layout properties like output page size, margins, and so on. So let's run the request. And we should hopefully get a correct output here. So this is the header I mentioned before, the invoice data that we had in the HTML, footer, another page, footer, yeah, the header on the second page. Yeah, so next up, OCR. Let's look into OCR. So imagine I have a PDF document like this one. This is a demo for the purposes of this presentation. Document that contains one page with the whole contents of that page is an image. So at this point, we can move to another part of our instructions DSL, we could say, which are actions. So right now we specified that we want to use the document, the document part that we had before, and we specify an array of actions that should be applied on top of this process document. In this case, it's OCR action, and we specify a language to English. We do We do some auto detection on the languages, but I would always recommend you, if you know that the document is only in a single language, it's very easier and prevents false misdetections. So when I run this, I get some error, but that's probably my network issue. I can try again here. Yeah, I moved a different example, sorry for that, but yeah, this is basically the same instructions, but the document is PNG. So in this case, what happens is I have this PNG document. It's converted to PDF, OCR, and then you get back a final PDF with the OCR text. So when I save it, and I can immediately see that, yeah, the search is possible. We can select text and notice that the image is fairly low quality and still detects, it still works fairly well in terms of detecting the actual contents. Another action that we can do is the watermark. So for this example, I'll use our company logo as an image watermark, and I also add some text as a standard, very basic text watermark. So similar to OCR, we specify the parts of the final document, and we apply watermark actions. So the first one is the image watermark action, where we specify the image to use. We can specify some dimensions as well as position the watermark on the page. And we can even specify some opacity value, so the watermark is transparent. The second action is the mentioned text watermark. So here I'm specifying left 0 as a position. So in this case, it will be positioned at the left corner, and there's bottom 100%, which means it will be positioned at the bottom of the page. So left bottom corner. And there's some font properties like color, font family, and so on. What watermark does is it takes itself into the PDF. So even when you download the PDF, it's not possible to edit it or get rid of it other than messing with the PDF in the page content in some PDF editor that handles like such low-level operations. So as you can see, I have an image watermark on each of my pages and the text watermark at the bottom. Now I've showed you multiple tools and ways to use the API. So let's do a more complex example to illustrate what could be possible. So let's look at the instructions in a code editor, because it's going to be easier to go through them. In this example, what I want to do is create a document where I put a cover page from one PDF, then I do image conversion on 2 images, one in English, one in German, and I'll run OCR on each of these images, and finally I'll watermark the whole page. So yeah, the first part says that you should take the first page, so page with index 0 from the cover.pdf. Then I want this PNG converted, and I want to run OCR action on top of it. By the way, I always showed the actions at the top level outside of the parts, but you can also specify actions that work only on the certain part. So that makes it a bit easier to express certain workflows. Here, similarly, I have another PNG in German and run OCR in German. And finally, I want to watermark the whole thing with company logo in top right corner. So let's look at it. These are all the files that we need as inputs. So we provide them, and here are the instructions that you showed you just now. Yeah, the document got processed. I have my cover page from the example PDF. I have the English PDF, that's OCR. I can select text there, and I have my German PDF at the end. Mike is asking a question about pricing, and that's fitting into this example exactly. If you do two separate API calls on the same document, that is 2 hits against your total, correct? But if you combine multiple actions in one API call, that is only 1 hit against your total. Exactly. Like this whole action, this combined example that I'm showing you, that's still consuming only one document from your quota. That's everything I have prepared for Postman. But yeah, of course, you don't want to use Postman for production. It's great for testing stuff, to prototyping, to get a feel of what's possible. But you'll probably want to integrate these PSPDFKit API into your own products. And for this case, we try to make this as easy as possible. And we do provide examples in multiple languages. So we picked these few. So like the most, I guess these are the most used ones. So Java, C#, JavaScript, Python, PHP. We try to use people who actually are experienced in those languages. So we pick a correct approach to bring those examples. Of course, any HTTP library that we used is basically just our own decision. For example, in JavaScript, we chose Axios, which could you might use something else, but if you just want to start, you can either use the Axios or adapt the example to your needs, but it shouldn't be that hard. If we believe that different libraries, for example, for JavaScript, approach the HTTP calls in a very similar manner. And yeah, I mentioned JavaScript because that's probably the easiest one to do live coding in. So I'm gonna show you how you can get started with it on a very simple request. I'm gonna do it as a node script, so just forgive me for not doing it in a real production way. But I assume if you use JavaScript, you'll probably use Node.js on your backend, so should be fairly easy to integrate into your existing live projects. So to get started with JavaScript, I would recommend you to first read through our Getting Started guide, where we talk about our expectations, like the dependencies we recommend, and also we'll guide you through a process of building that API request. So it's as easy for you as possible to get started. So yeah, what I'm gonna need is just this part. So let's move to the terminal, create a new directory, and run npm init, which creates a brand new project. I'll install those two dependencies that we need. So it's Axios for handling HTTP calls and form data for handling multi-part requests, or for creating the bodies of multi-part requests. Let's create a new file. Let's name it like execute request. And let's switch to the browser. I'm gonna do a watermark example again. I just want to illustrate the power of our samples and how easy it is to get started. So yeah, now I have a watermark tool open, and here I get a guided tour through making the first request. I'll switch to JavaScript example. Here I get the code. I can copy it and paste it into my file. So I guess it's not very interesting to go through it because not all of you are using JavaScript or really care about it. But what I want to illustrate is, for example, this part, the instructions handling. We are trying to not do just like, yeah, here you get the instructions in string and you just use it. We try to be as production ready as possible in terms of what we recommend people using. Like, of course, you don't want to handle JSONs manually because, like, if you use the JavaScript object and convert it to JSON, it's way easier to catch any syntax errors or whatever that's basically called by the compiler for you. So I strongly recommend you to using something like this, be it in Java, C#, whenever. And yeah, of course, I'll also need some input files. I'm gonna copy two that I prepared for this demo. So these are these two parts: the document, the input document, and a company logo. And now, hopefully, if everything's all aligned, it should work out nicely. So with the request, and let's open this in Finder, and I have a result PDF somewhere here. Yeah, and this is the document with watermark in the middle. So yeah, and as you've seen, this was just a watermark example, but you can find examples for either running the request through curl in your terminal or any of the supported languages for all tools that we provide. That concludes a demo section of this talk, and since there's no further questions for this part, I can talk briefly about some things that I want to make clearer and maybe were lost in the talk and so on. So one of them is what options you have in deploying the hosted API. As I mentioned before, the hosted API is a service provided by us. We manage the whole infrastructure. and you pay per each document processed. In terms of deploying it, as you've seen, it's as simple as sending a HTTP request to our endpoint. So it should be very, very simple to integrate it into your workflows, into your apps, or whenever. In case that this approach, like the whole infrastructure being handled by us, is not suiting your needs, for example, most often it might be security considerations or privacy considerations. You don't want to hand your documents to third party, or reasons like this. Also reasons like you are not happy about the per document pricing and you are willing to handle the infrastructure yourself. We also provide processor for Linux, which is basically the same set of features that's provided as a Docker container that can be deployed in your infrastructure. In this case, you don't pay per process document, you pay a license fee that's tailored to your exact use case. So if you are interested, just contact our sales and they'll get into talks with you and try to adapt to whatever you need. And to talk a bit about security, I already started with it in terms of privacy. Yeah, that's not something we can solve. If you can't, due to law reasons or even just your beliefs, don't want to handle input files to us, that's fine. But if you handle them to us, if you decide to go with us, we guarantee you that the input files are not persisted anywhere. We clean them up as soon as the request finish, and we basically guarantee that we don't store any of your private data. We store some metadata, be it you've seen the website, so we store your account data with history of your purchases, what subscription you are on, and so on. And we store performance-related data about the requests. This is done for analytics reason and basically for observability, so we know what tools people use, what's slow, what's potentially underused, and so on, so we can improve our offering in the future. But there's no private identifying information stored in this data. Even with that, we still encrypt our databases, so it limits the possible attack surfaces, and we make HTTPS mandatory, so you can't use us without encryption. In case of your payment details, because I mentioned subscriptions, you need to handle your credit card to us. We don't have direct access to it. We use a third-party vendor, Pedal, which handles all the payments for us. So this means that we can misuse your credit card data. Yeah, and that concludes the webinar. We can go through questions and I'll try to answer them. Yeah, there's a question. Does the HTML to PDF conversion follow the media print styles? For example, if there are non-printed elements in the sent HTML file or different text sizes for printouts? Basically, we try to do. You don't want to look at the HTML conversion as a generic conversion for web pages. So it's not like you can get okay result if you just get a random web page and send the HTML to us, but this is not the way how we designed the whole feature. As I mentioned before, we chose HTML because it's people know how to use it, and you can express very complex visuals through it. So yeah, to answer your questions, the print styles as far as I know, are not used for the conversion. But I might be mistaken. So if yeah, I can check it out and get back to you after the webinar, if that's okay. Yeah, good question. Do you have an API for e-signatures? PSPDFKit as a platform supports digital signatures in all sorts of different modes and sizes and so on. So it means like we support even stuff like we support a wide range of standards and so on, but it's not yet part of the API. It's in our immediate roadmap. So if people express their interest in the feature, we'll definitely think about adding it soon. So I'll also look at the chat. There's not much going on there. Yeah, another question, do you have support for the Arabic language? Right now, it depends on used font, but I would need to try, but it should be supported. And in terms of OCR, we can quickly check it out because there's a nice list of all the languages we support at this moment. So yeah, the Arabic is not there at the moment. So yeah, I'm not sure if you asked about OCR or about conversion, but in case of OCR, Arabic is not supported. Yeah, so in case of PDFs, if you have PDFs to continue, Khaled is asking about if we have support for Arabic language. To continue on that, he extended the question to any parts of your API. So I guess to answer, if you have a PDF with Arabic characters, we won't mess up the rendering in any way. So if you do document editing on top of that, it will still work. If you have Office files with Arabic, it will convert to proper PDF with proper fonts too. In case of OCR, yeah, as I mentioned, it's not supported. Also, to get back to Brad regarding the print media styles, I just got the answer from my colleague, and yeah, we don't use them. So it's yeah, they are not followed when converting the HTML to PDF. Yeah, I'll give you maybe a minute to post additional questions, and after that, I think we can conclude. So it looks like there's nothing else. So I guess I gave you some basic idea as well as some guides on how to get started with the API. And there's one question: do you allow the selection of hosting regions? Right now we are hosting in Europe, but we plan to extend that offering to other regions too. I hope that answers your questions. Okay, so I think there's something in the chat, and yeah, of course, we'll thank you. I think we can conclude the talk. I hope you can take something out of it, and thank you for watching. I hope you'll have a good day, and goodbye.